Is June 19th. It's a Monday. My name is Bill McCamley. I'm a state representative from Las Cruces and Necia with your legislative update for the day. So I just got back late Saturday night from a week-long trip to Canada. I was invited by the Canadian Embassy to go to Ottawa, Iqaluit, which is about 200 miles south of the Arctic Circle, and Quebec City, which was very interesting in that it's one of the only French-speaking places in the North American continent. The three takeaways from this trip, I would say, after a lot of meetings and a lot of work, but for you, are number one, climate change is real. And it's funny, we heard it in Ottawa. It's a huge part of their public policy process at the national level. But going to Iqaluit, which is right near the Arctic Circle, and going to Quebec, which is right on a huge river called the St. Lawrence, it's a big day-to-day thing for them. So for instance, in Iqaluit, they knock stakes into the ground to build their buildings on because it's permafrost. 3 feet underneath the sand is a layer of ice, and they have to keep it frozen because otherwise the buildings settle and sink into the mud. So as the permafrost starts to melt, they're really worried about their buildings up there actually sinking and being destroyed. The other issue they've got that they told us is that as glacial ice melts into their bays, there's usually no waves whatsoever, but as these things go in there, they're huge and they erode the land, some of which is actually close to some of their homes. So they're dealing with the climate change issue in the Arctic Circle every day. And it's funny because their power comes from diesel generators and this huge effort to move to either wind and solar or hydroelectric power because they say, hey, look, why are we contributing to this problem that we see the results of every day? In Quebec, I asked one of their equivalent of their state legislators, their state provincial representatives, what the issue was. He said, look, the St. Lawrence River freezes all the time, and when it doesn't freeze as much on the sides of the river, and when there's a lot more water from melting ice coming faster, it erodes away the side of their river, and not only does that harm farmland and people's homes, but it creates a lot more flooding. So it's really interesting that we don't see climate change too much on a day-to-day basis affecting us here in New Mexico. They do, and so it is real, and I think we can only start to see the effects come south as it becomes more and more of an issue. The second thing I would say is that we toured an airport in Iqaluit, which is hugely important because everything that comes to this little town in the middle of nowhere, Google it if you don't know where it is. Everything's either got to come by plane or in 2 or 3 months that they have actually unfrozen water, ships come in. But their airport's really important, and their terminal is this big. I mean, it's literally tiny. And they have done a public-private partnership to build a much bigger terminal. We toured the terminal. We talked with the person who was in charge of running it from the government. He said, look, this is not a silver bullet. There definitely are some issues in terms of having a private company come and run this thing for a length of time. But he said, we need the infrastructure. There was no way we would have been able to get this done on a piecemeal basis that governments usually do things. And he said, look, this is worth doing. So I'm coming around on this issue. It's been something I've been very iffy about, but it does seem to work. So I'm going to be taking this a lot more seriously moving forward as a legislator. The last thing I'll say is that NAFTA is obviously a huge deal for them, and it's a little worrisome that they still do not have an ambassador. So President Trump has still not gotten around to appointing someone up there in a fairly important position considering they're our biggest trading partner. Furthermore, he triggered the clause in the NAFTA agreement allowing us to renegotiate what that is, and that will start in August. However, we really didn't know, we couldn't find out from either the embassy in Ottawa or the consulate in Quebec what the plan was. Apparently they haven't heard if there's a plan. And so the dysfunction that is happening in Washington, D.C. is being felt, I imagine, worldwide. And that is something that is very concerning and should be concerning to us as Americans, especially since we here in New Mexico benefit from NAFTA and trade with Mexico so much. Well, they're feeling it up there too. So that's the report. We start our interim committees tomorrow, at least for me, and I'll be back at you at least 3 times in the next couple of weeks with reports of those committees I'm on. As always, if you have questions, comments, or concerns on these or any of the issues, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks a lot, and hope you're having a great day. Bye.